And it should happen in the days that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all the people. All who would heave it away, will surely be cut in pieces through all the nations of earth and gathered against it. In the day, says the Lord, I will strike every horse with confusion, and its rider with madness. I will open my eyes on the house of Judah, and will strike every horse of the people with blindness. So he starts out, Jerusalem's going to be like a very heavy stone tool. They're not going to be able to move him. But what's he going to do to help them? He's going to strike every horse with confusion, and the riders with madness. So they're not going to be able to think right, are they? But he said about the drunkenness, now he's going to say about the madness. It's all being confused. They're really confused about what's going on. And then in verse 5 he says, and the governors of Judah shall say in their hearts, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength, and the Lord of hosts, their God. So, Judah and Israel, Judah and Jerusalem, which is Israel, what are they going to be? They're God's strength, aren't they? And then in verse 6 he says, in the day I will make the governors of Judah like a fire pan in the woodpile, and like a fury torch of the sheaves. They should devour all the surrounding people of the right hand and the left hand. But Jerusalem shall inhabit it against its own place in Jerusalem. The Lord will save the tent in Judah first, so that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall not become greater than that of Judah. So, and then he says, in the days the Lord will defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the ones who are feeble among you. Them in the days shall be like David, and the house of David shall be like God, like the angel of the Lord before you. So, what are they going to do? He says the feeble ones are going to be just as strong as the strong ones. They're going to go out and conquer the smaller areas first. And what's happened? They're going to be like David. And he said, don't be the first ones. And he said in verse 9, it shall be in the day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. So who's going to be struck down? All the nations of Jerusalem. He's not even talking yet. This wasn't even Armageddon starting yet. This is just starting out. And he's telling them about this. And now, in verse 10, he starts going into Armageddon. And he says, I will pour in the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication. Then they will look on me, whom I pierced, yes. They will mourn for him, and one mourns for his son, and grieve for him, and one grieves for his firstborn. If you remember, what did they just realize? They're going to realize who's their Savior. Who just came back? Jesus came back, didn't he? When Jesus came back, he says here, the spirit of grace and supplication, they'll be looking at him. They didn't really believe that he was the one that's going to save them, did they? So they're going to realize now that Jesus, the one they crucified, is the one that's going to save them. And he says in verse 11, in that day there shall be great mourning in Jerusalem, like the mourning that happened Rima in the plain of Megiddo. And the land shall mourn, every family by itself, the family of the house of David by itself, and their wives by themselves, the families of the houses of Nathan by itself, and their wives by themselves, the families of the house of Levi by itself, and the wives of themselves, the family of Shimon by itself, and their wives by themselves. All the family remains, every family by itself, and their wives by themselves. So how are they going to mourn? They're all going to mourn by themselves, aren't they? He goes down through there, each one of them. The families, the people, the siblings, the wives, the husband, everybody is going to mourn by themselves. So, and then he goes in chapter 13, and the days of foundation shall be opened for the house of David and for the inhabitants of Jerusalem, for sin and for uncleanliness. I shall be in that day, says the Lord of the hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols from the land, and they shall no longer be remembered. I will also cause the prophets and the unclean spirits to depart from the land. I shall come to pass that if anyone still prophesies, then his father and mother begot him will say to him, you shall not live because you spoke lies and named the Lord. And his fathers and mothers who begot him shall thrust him through when he prophesies. And that shall be the day that every prophet will be ashamed of his vision. When his prophets, they will not wear a robe or coarse hair in the seed, but they will say, I am not a prophet, I am a foreigner. For the man taught me to keep cattle from my youth. And one will say to him, what are these wounds between your arms? Then he will answer, those with which I wounded is the house of my friends. So what happens whenever Jesus comes back? No longer do you need prophecy, do you? So all these prophets that were prophesied before, there's no reason for them, is there? There's no reason for their visions or anything. But guess what? They're going to ask them, were you a prophet? And they're going to say no. Because what happens, they can see, if you think about whenever they had the altar over there, now what's his name? got a brain freeze here. But whenever they prayed to Baal and something didn't happen, what did they do? They cut themselves. Yeah, Elijah. They cut themselves, wouldn't they? They make themselves bleed. So what happens here? They say they know who they are, because what do they have? They have cuts on their arms. So you'll be able to tell who was prophesying at that time. And they'll be able to see. But this is during the second coming. Guess what happens in the second coming? Armageddon hasn't even started yet. The second coming, where does the Christians go? We go up to heaven before the second coming, don't we? So before the second coming, we're all going to go up in heaven. The people for the churches, the believers, are supposed to go up to heaven. The rest are going to be here left for Armageddon, aren't they? And we are lucky we won't be here. And if you look through scriptures and that, it says that, we'll be taken up. And then in verse 7 he says, now he starts in Armageddon. Awake, O sword, against my shepherds, against the men who is my companion, says the Lord of hosts. Strike the shepherds, and the sheep will scatter. Then I will turn my hand against the little ones. And it shall come to pass in all the land, says the Lord, that 2/3 of it shall be cut off and die. But 1/3 shall be left in it. I will bring 1/3 through the fire. Will refine it in silver. It refines the test that is gold is tested. They will call on my name, and I will answer them. I will say, this is my people. And each one will say, the Lord is my God. So what does he do first? He scatters them. And then 2/3 shall be cut off and die. But 1/3 is left, aren't they? But what's going to happen to them? They're going to be refined by fire. Just like you do with gold. If you want pure gold, what do? You heat it up, you melt it, you get the purities out of it. That's what they're going to go through. If you're left here during the last days, during Armageddon, guess what? It's not going to be pleasant for you. I mean, you're going to be beaten. You're going to be everything for God, for being a Christian. If you don't have the mark of the beast, you don't eat. I mean, you get the mark of the beast, then you're done. So if you're a Christian during that time, you're going to do a lot of suffering. It's not like now. I mean, we might say some people are martyred now, but during that time, completely different. It's going to be a total destruction again. You don't want to be here. And then in chapter 14, he says, "Behold, the day of the Lord is coming, and your spoils will be divided in your midst. For I will gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem. The city shall be taken, the house rifled, and the women ravished. Half of the city shall go into captivity. The remnant of the people shall not be cut off from the city." So what's going to happen? Jerusalem's going to be overtaken, isn't it? And guess what? The women are going to be ravished. They're going to be taken advantage of. And then the remnants of the people cut off from the whole city. They're going to be removed from the whole city. Then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations, as he fights in the days of battle. In the days, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem east. And the Mount of Olives shall be split into two, from the east and the west, making a very large valley. Half the mountain shall move towards the north, and half towards the south. Then they shall flee through my mountain valleys, and the mountain valleys shall reach Azal. Yes, you shall flee. Also flee from the earthquakes of the days of you as king of Judah. Those the Lord made, my God, will come, and all saints with you. It shall come to pass in that day that there is no light. The light will diminish. Its days be one day, which is known to the Lord, neither day nor night, but at evening time it shall happen that it will be light. And in that day it shall be, the living water shall flow from Jerusalem, half of them towards the east, and half towards the west sea. In both summer and winter it shall occur. So do we know when the day of the Lord is coming? No. Nobody knows. No. Nobody knows the time or the day. And how's it going to happen? It's just going to be all at once. We'll be surprised when it happens. And that's what he's prophesizing, you know. They're going to come in and attack. And then he says in verse 9, "And the Lord shall be the king over the earth. In the days it shall be, the Lord is one, and his name one. And the land shall be turned into a plain from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem. Jerusalem shall be raised up and inhabited in her place, from Benjamin's gate to the place of the first gate and the corner gate, and from the tower of heaven to the king's winepress." So the whole world is going to become plain. And in Isaiah 40, it also prophesies that too. And there's Isaiah 40, verse 3 through 5. It says this: "The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a byway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill brought low. The crooked places shall be made straight, and the rough places made smooth. The glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and the flesh shall see it together. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken." So, it's going to be all plains, except for one place, the Mount of Olives. So, in verse 11 it says, "The people shall dwell in it, and no longer shall be utter destruction, but Jerusalem shall be safely inhabited. And this shall be the plagues with which the Lord will strike the people who fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall be dissolved while they stand on their feet. Their eyes shall be dissolved in their sockets, and their tongue shall dissolve in their mouth. It shall come to pass in that day that a great panic from the Lord will be among them. Everyone will seize the hand of his neighbor and raise a hand against the neighbor's hand. So what are they going to do? Their flesh is going to start dissolving. It says their tongue shall dissolve in their mouth, their eyes shall dissolve in the sockets. It's like a plague. You know? And people are going to go against neighbor. There's going to be fighting, isn't there? Do you want to be around one of them? I don't want to be. Judah also will fight at Jerusalem, and their wealth of all surrounding nations shall be gathered together, gold and silver and apparel in great abundance. Such also shall be the plagues on the horses and mules, and the camels and the donkeys, and all the cattle that will be in those camps. So shall the plague he be. So even the animals and everything are going to die. So it's great destruction. And in verse 16 it says, "And I shall come to pass that everyone who is left of all the nations which come against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and keep a feast of the tabernacles. And it shall be that whichever of the families of the earth do not come up to Jerusalem and worship the King, the Lord of hosts, on them will be no rain. And the family of Egypt will not come up and enter in, they shall have no rain. They shall receive the plagues with which the Lord strikes the nations, who do not come up to keep the feast of the tabernacle. This shall be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all the nations that do not come and keep the feast of the tabernacle. In that day, holiness to the Lord shall be engraved on the bells of the horses, and the pots of the Lord's host shall be like the bowls before the altar. Yes, every pot in Jerusalem and Judah shall be holiness to the Lord's host. Everyone who sacrifices shall come and take them and cook in them. In that day there shall be no longer be Canaanites in the house of the Lord of hosts. So if you're not worshiping the Lord, what's going to happen? He's going to put plagues and droughts. So, if you're an Armageddon, you're not doing that stuff, and you're here for that, guess what? You're going to suffer the consequences. He's not messing around. He's coming back. He came back this time on the horse. He's ready to fight. When he comes back the second time, Jesus is making sure that people are ready. And we better be ready.